Today's session is all about healing. Just healing, healing. We're in full healing mode, full tilt healing mode today. Yesterday, there was a lot of talk because there's a lot of information out there about the virus, but it's time to do the healing now. For that reason, I would actually like to start today's session a little differently from the way I usually do, which is I would like to, good to see everybody. I would like to start with a little bit of silence. And this ties into the recap from yesterday. Yesterday I told the story of, make sure I pronounce names right, I still told the story of Visuchika, which was form identified back in Vedic times for that ultimately became you could say ultimately became the overseeing intelligence of viruses. From book 3 of the Utapati Kanda of the Gyan Vasishta, otherwise known as the Yoga Vasishta. So the story, and I told the story, and then the upshot of the story is that Brahma gives a mantra to all the awakened beings that has the specific sound qualities which counteract the virus. The overseeing deity of that form that becomes the virus asked for a boon from Brahma that it could have such a body that it could penetrate the physiologies of humans and destroy it, and destroy them, and kind of exploit them. And Brahma granted the boon because that's just the way nature functions. Nature functions in a way that if you give what you're supposed to give from your side, nature gives what it gives from its side. But knowing that this was a destructive form on the face of the earth, also the antidote was given. So I think what I'd like to do today is I'd like to start with about 3 minutes of silence. I'll time us. I don't have anything with a sweep second hand, so I will attempt to time us approximately 2 to 3 minutes. That we can begin in that deep, inebriating, eternal silence of being. And then I will play the mantra. And then we'll take a moment or so to come out of our silence. And then we will dive into today's healing. That's the plan. All right, let's do this. Thank you for being with me, everyone. Let's close our eyes. I'm going to play the recording now.
Shri Vasishtha Uvacha Om Hrim Hram Hrim Ram Vishnu Shaktaye Namaha Om Namo Bhagavati Vishnu Shakti Menam Om Hara Hara Naya Naya Pacha Pacha Matha Matha Utsadaya Dure Kuru Swaha Himavantam Gaccha Shiva Saha 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 Chandramandalagato Siswaha.
Thank you to the source of creation for being all of us, all the world, all the universe, for the gift of consciousness as a healing modality, for the gift of the human body, and a shout out to our ancestors on that account. To that which bridges, that great eternal tradition of knowledge that bridges the spectrum of expression from absolute unmanifest, pure eternal silent source of creation through to the manifest field of creation, for our ability to be a genuinely evolutionary force, expression of divine intention, divine and transformation in this world today in our healing webinar. To support our dear world family, to smooth out the massive transition in which we are now enjoying ourselves. The evolution of everyone's ability to master energy healing, to use energy healing, to own that technology in such a way as to be able to apply it anytime, in any place, successfully. Thank you, everyone, for being with me today. Energy healing engages awareness in a way which isolates out the evolutionary value in any challenge, in any illness, in any situation, it isolates out the evolutionary value and then activates or enlivens that evolutionary value. This is the fastest path through experiences of suffering. This is the fast path. That's what energy healing is for the new people. Usually I do a big recap from yesterday, but I don't think I will. We all can read the news ourselves. And already questions have come in about the news. There's plenty to say about the virus. And this energy healing webinar is about the etheric body essentially anyway. Of course, you guys know I have to make these titles like months in advance. And therefore, I don't always know what's going to be up exactly, 3 months down the road. I don't know. A lot can happen. That's ancient history. That's a long time in the story of energy healing and the amount of information and change and transformation that comes forward, especially now that our whole world is essentially in healing mode. It's an exceptionally good time for us to meet together and do energy healing. On that note, I have something to say, which is question came in from a local participant. And his point is that the energy healing we do in these sessions is so powerful. Why not figure out a way to create a format for the healing sessions? Here it is. He says he's participated and loved the webinars since Rick Archer, the Rick Archer interview, which was years ago. Question, could I please offer a pair of free global coronavirus healing webinars to everyone, absolutely everyone, and get as big a foundation of healers and individuals who have an interest in participating in a large group healing session as possible? So yes, I love and embrace this suggestion with all my heart. Therefore, it is my intention that next weekend, at first I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just do one webinar, but that's no fair. If I do one in the evening, that takes care of everybody in the time zones west of us. And if I do one Saturday morning, that takes care of everyone in the time zones east of us. For those of you who are close to me, you can participate in both, of course, but I don't want to leave anybody out. Every single person is valued and appreciated. So just letting you know that's going to be next weekend, same times as this weekend, Friday night, Saturday morning, my time. I will put a reminder when you get the recordings, please pass this word out to as many of your email people as possible. Thank you. Yeah, it's like, what am I going to do? I'm hanging around at home. I may as well be helping out. And today we will do, we're just in full tilt healing mode. So, we'll do the healings that we do this weekend today. That will be a foundation for what comes next weekend. All right. In our silence, which is the foundation of all energy healing. In that silent moment that we took at the beginning of today's session, I experienced about, I'd say in the last minute or so of that silence, a great upsurge of strength. And I noticed listening to the mantra, which I haven't listened to that many times, but listening to it, I felt also a quality of great internal strength in that mantra. So, coming from two separate angles simultaneously, the objective and the subjective together, I understand that what we're doing is we're building strength. Since the focus of our session is overarchingly on the etheric body, let us look to the 4 dense levels of the physiology. If you recall the if you recall, the two, sorry, somebody just wrote 2 emails. They just sent in 2 emails. Story from yesterday about the demon, if you want to call it that. We're using that word because it was used in the story. That became the virus, that overarching law of nature, or that overarching form of creation that became the administrator of viral infections, was an allegory for the evolution of the human mind. The area of the physiology responsible for the weakness, responsible for holding the karma that causes one to accept or receive the virus, is more the denser levels of the physiology. It's more mental activity, emotional activity, the denser levels. And the point that came up yesterday was that these levels, including etheric body, including physical body, because that's where we hold these imbalances. So I'm just making lots of references back to the source of creation within myself. What is the best path of purification for the 4 dense levels of the physiology: physical, etheric, mental, and emotional? First impulse arising from being is compassion. Second impulse is something that's a little bit, I'd say, highly discriminating and very one-pointed in its approach to the 4 dense levels of the physiology. Looks to me, it's so interesting. In the story from yesterday about, Vasuchika, she turned her body from a big, thick body into a body of just a little tiny needle, something like a little tiny needle that's able to penetrate into the physiology of all humanity, into people's hearts. That was the idea, her idea. I see something that looks like that, that's actually being produced as an antidote, that comes up and is able, because it's very pointed, it's able to come up and pluck out, like peel out those little threads of misfunction, of malfunction, which are in the web of the physiology, in the web of the physiology. And when I say that, I mean energetic web, but I also mean some of the systems that are web-like, such as circulatory and particularly nervous system. And strength builds in the solar plexus area. Strength of intention, strength of discrimination is coming from the head area. It's meeting. So that discrimination comes from the head, and the actual power to produce change comes from the solar plexus, and it meets right here in the heart and in the heart region. An energy which is very, I would say, intense. Feels like, it's not like a big lovey-dovey type of energy, but it's more of a very pointed, very specific, very focused energy. It almost has some elements of, I'd say both elements. I'm seeing elements of fire, water, and air. Water, fire, air, in that level from finer, or let's see, air. Air is at the end. Air, fire, water, like that. Dense, subtle to dense. Now I'm feeling the discordant feelings that specifically draw or attract, like a magnet, attract the energy of the energy signature which is associated or connected to the virus into the body. There's despair. We're clearing despair. Yesterday I kept thinking, oh, we're going to do a healing for the fear because people are really afraid. But the fear, when it becomes so blown out of proportion that it has to transmute, it becomes anger. And when anger gets so blown out of its proportion that it has to transmute, it becomes depression or despair. So what I'm actually feeling is that. There's also a giving up energy, and that is in a lot of bodies. Now, mind you, all these energies that I'm feeling, they're in the 4 dense levels of the body, including etheric. Sorry, we're not getting so specific with etheric yet. Maybe that'll come later. Clearing the despair, clearing the feeling of giving up, hopelessness. This ties into an important question that came in this morning. A lady was asking about the value of self-sacrifice. And she noticed a lot of that feeling coming up last night, that this is very, very old energy. This is a very, very old pattern or habit that's entrenched in humanity going back so many generations, that something is not going right. Well, quick, let's sacrifice a goat, right? You know, there's always something. There's something you can sacrifice. It's one of the 4 pillars. These are my 4 pillars of Dharma over here. So there's that pillar of tapas, of letting go, sacrifice. And the idea is, what more can I sacrifice? What can I give up? What can I give of myself in order to try to make amends for this problem situation? This is not the approach of energy healing. We are on the verge of such a major transformation, such a huge change as the world has not seen in thousands of years. We are in it. We signed up for this. We are looking at a much more sophisticated way of dealing with the problem. The solution, we go into the field of unmanifest being. The field of unmanifest being provides clear sight. The clear sight shines on the evolutionary transformation requested of us by this problem. And that evolutionary transformation, then we focus our attention, we're focusing our attention intelligently on the value of the evolutionary transformation. And then that transformation dominates, it predominates, and it takes over all the flow that's going on in and around, is swirling around this big situation. All that energy gets directed into the evolutionary transformation itself in a very fine manner. This, our united intention in this group, our group healing, is focusing this. The evolutionary transformation is then able to take root and grow and evolve naturally without the sacrifice, without the illness. This also addresses another question that came in. Beautiful, beautiful dear soul. So many beautiful dear souls here. That's the sacrifice question. Here's the question. He has underlying health conditions, immune system issues, trying to do everything to not catch the virus. And the question came up because yesterday we were looking at, well, what is the value that the COVID-19 is bringing? What is that evolutionary value? And we were looking at that, and he said it made it sound as if you almost have to get, it's like he puts in here, kind of like a must-have accessory. You know, it's like the COVID-19 is this tool almost. We're turning the tables on the virus and turning it into a tool for evolution. But the answer here is no, we don't have to get sick. We don't have to get sick in order to stabilize and integrate the evolutionary effect. Kind of like the 100th monkey effect. The principle here is with our full focus on the evolutionary transformation itself, then we bypass all the slow, arduous, painful steps of getting the sickness and being pulled down by it and so forth. Yeah. I'm just reading through the question. Right. Right. Here in the, so this is a man who's so good with words. Here in the webinar, perhaps, in the form of an energy healing, with our most powerful, in capital letters, collective, which makes contracting the virus redundant from an evolutionary perspective, you betcha. Or through the sun, perhaps. Or perhaps through the sun. Staying indoors keeps us out of the sun to a certain degree. And the sun, of course, is one of the great sources of healing energy in our field, in our world, because sun is Atma, right? Sun is the self. It is that light. That's why we took that moment of silence at the beginning of today's session. That's why we keep referencing back to that silence. I keep closing my eyes. So even more, that silence, that's it. So one of the outcomes of the presence of the virus and so many self-isolating individuals and so much inward stroke is that the quality of the silence thickens. The silence itself becomes, the deepest value of that silence becomes more accessible. We could say, well, the silence of being is eternally silent, so what more of that depth of unmanifestness can one get? It's not that the silence becomes more silent, it's that our ability to experience the total potential of that silence enhances and increases. So this is the first key piece that's surfacing that is a byproduct of this healing, is our potential, our ability to deeply and profoundly, completely experience, to thoroughly experience the depths of that silence. The solution is very much a refinement of the mind. The mind thinks on a more gross thought level, and then it is able to think at finer levels. And when it does that, it also spreads out. This story of Vasuchika, I think I finally remember it without reading the name, sorry guys, was that her body went from being a big, thick, fat body to lots of little pieces body. When I look at the evolution of mind required to comprehend, this is transcending from the level of the mind, right? Because we can transcend from 5 senses, mind, or intellect. The same pattern occurs, like these trees. It starts out as a big, thick, and then it splits apart and becomes many, many small, little. And of course, that's the same, we've talked about this earlier, this is the same shape that our lungs have, and the illness is in the lungs, and it's literally making that part of the body cry so that awareness goes, so that we look very carefully at this particular form of ourself, which is a form of mind. This is a form of mind. When it spreads out into all the little fine points of its own experience, it is able to identify, to fall upon those points and locations in our reality which are anchors to that silence, the silence of being. Just feeling that, that's a combination. Think of, I didn't really think when I put up this picture, I just thought, oh, I like the softness of the colors. That's all I was thinking. But think about the roots of these trees, how they go under the ground, they have the same shape underneath that they have on top, and how it's out at the little fine points of the roots that the nutrients, that the mineralogical intelligence of the earth and the water is able to come into the tree. In that same way, the structures of mind, which go out to their very fine, they call it shukshma. I'm pretty sure that's the word. I have it all written down over here. They're Vedic terms for all these things. Sarira is like the big thick form, is like the big trunk form. And then shukshma is the really fine, yes, it's the really fine element. And the fine aspect of mind is able to draw up, it's like the roots of the tree, it draws up the silence and it draws it up into the big form. It draws it up into the full form of the mind. So this pattern is being offered back to being as an energy, is like a template for the healing of the mind. And that's really, from my perspective, this is really behind the illness that is being faced on earth right now. So many people stuck at the gross level of their being, and their mind's not comfortable going down to those fine levels where they can draw up the silence of being and draw it into the trunk of the self. There is a light medicine being produced in all of our physiologies, which supports that process. This is the response of the intelligence of our physiologies to the offering of that template to being. We offer the pattern, going out to the little points and the edges, and then drawing up the infinite silence and drawing it up into the trunk. And the response is a light medicine, building in the heart, in the chest area. There's a lady writing in all caps, ooh, is there a way to increase our patience and centeredness to manifest from silence? Clearing attachments. Thank you for the question. We're clearing attachments in mental and etheric bodies, clearing attachments, emotional, mental, etheric, and physical bodies. Clearing attachments. Attachments are like fog. They're like mucus. In fact, physical mucus has a correlation with attachments. And that fog has been clouding up the 4 dense levels of the physiology and obstructing our ability to manifest from silence. I'm offering back to being the intention. The intention is here. How do we clear this fog? It's so thick. We're not just clearing it from our own individual physiologies here, everybody. This webinar is all about a healing which is taking place multidimensionally. So we're doing this for everyone. Cosmic cleanser is a good starting point. Cosmic cleanser is like a solvent. It's very good at clearing the fog. I'm seeing the fog thicker in the subtle levels of the physiology. Definitely the attachments and fear are yoked to, the attachments are yoked to fear, and it's more sitting at the emotional and mental levels of the physiology. So more attachments are deeper in the 4 dense levels than at the grosser levels. This tells me that this is the seed or foundation upon which many people will fall ill coming in the future. So we're going to clear that now. Our collective, focusing on emotional and mental levels of the physiology, offering the intention to dissolve the attachments to being. What do we need to do? The answer coming back is the attachments are all, they're all associated with different chords. Attachments to something. The attachments connect to something. So this would be the pillar of Dharma that we think of as austerity, right? Letting go. And that has to come along with the pillar of truth. That's our big pillar here, the pillar of truth. Because the principle here is what we're letting go is not a sacrifice or a self-sacrifice or letting go of life or letting go of comfort. We're letting go of all the attachments that connect everybody. We're talking world family here, everyone, to the structures that bind one to the core, to the big body. We want to start, it has to start to soften and become more liquidy. That's why it's going more from the watery form over to the more air form in that field. And actually, I see all 5 primordial elements involved in this healing. And it's basically what we're doing is we're working through the 5, we're working with the 5 primordial elements in the emotional, mental, etheric, and physical levels of the body. And the clearing is moving through from earth element to water element to, in this order, fire, and then air and space. And it's extracting, the healing is softening up and starting to liquefy and loosen up the attachments as they are embedded in these denser energies or the denser forms of the physiology. Now, remember, the 5 primordial elements can express at a completely physical material level, but they also have their subtler forms. So we're looking also at subtler forms of the 5 elements. Mostly fear is clearing. Fear seems to be connected to the attachments, and people are afraid to let go of things that they're attached to. They're afraid to let go of the familiar. One of the energies that's coming forward from our collective is a kind of inspired enthusiasm or excitement for new forms, for the unknown, for going into the unknown, and for doing things that we're not used to doing, for learning new things. And this is the whole value of human experience, is to move into areas that we've never been before. This is what we do. This is what human intelligence and creativity, what our pure potential, this side is our pure potential over here. What our pure potential is for is to find ways to bring divine expression into the relative. Offering that back to the source of creation. And what's coming forward is that attachments to things in the relative are completely irrelevant. You can keep them, you can let them go, it doesn't matter. That what's really important here are our attachments at deeper levels, attachments to subtler expressions, subtler understanding of self. There's another flow coming out through the heart area. I'm feeling this flow in the heart area. Flow in the heart area is a combination of wisdom and power, right? These two come together and they give rise to this lovely capacity of the heart to understand our experience. That being is experiencing its own nature, period. We take personal responsibility, we take personal ownership, but that personal ownership is only our individual attempt to bring that divine expression and experience, which is constantly going on. That divine dialogue is constantly going on within its own nature, within the field of pure infinite silence, to bring it out into the relative. So any amount of taking ownership or responsibility or claiming it, that's where the attachments are. Aha. So they're lighting up. Thank you, everybody. So these are the attachments. These are the attachments that are clearing. This is not, I'm such a bad person because I had these attachments. This is, oh, well, I was doing my best to bring the divine dialogue into the field of my direct relative experience, and I'm doing it by kind of taking ownership. But now the ownership quality, the quality of ownership takes on its eternal form, or its eternal value. Years ago, we were living on the same floor with a mathematician, brilliant guy, brilliant mind. And he had been working directly, he went to Holland, and he was working with the scholars there on the infinite value of each number. That there's, and he came back, he was trying to explain to us, and I'm like, I don't quite get it. But of course, I'm not a mathematician, but the principle was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the numbers have their value, their relative value, but then they've also got this eternal infinite value. There's like the infinite value of 3, or the infinite value of 7 or 9, or, you know, each number has, it's kind of like the number has its gross value and then its fine value. And we're looking at a similar pattern here with this form of taking responsibility or ownership of experience. That ownership has its individual value, but ownership has its eternal value. And at the level of ownership's eternal value, it's all about the ownership is the process of divine source folding in on its own nature. Through that eternal process, ownership is expressed. It's like part of that process. It's an expression of this. So here we're diving deeply into the silent field of being. And we are appreciating, because we're human. So humans have this ability to appreciate these details. We are the details. See up there, we're all those, the humans are all these, and then the divine is the trunk, right? Is the one wholeness. And then all the little pieces, we're appreciating the nuances of the fold of divine nature into itself, its own self-referral dynamics, and its own internal dialogue. And part of that story is a sense of ownership, a sense of self. So we're really looking at a form of cosmic ego. Okay, my lovelies, 11:46. There are so many questions that are in here. So I really want to be sure to look at all. We want to look at all. We're just going to let that sink and integrate a bit, and let the next work that we do with the upcoming questions also sink in and integrate. This is a shift for ego. Basically, what I'm seeing from this, let me summarize quickly, and then we'll go to the questions. When mind evolves, the byproduct is a reflection which goes back mind, intellect, and then back to ego, which is the finest of the 8 prakritis. It reflects back as a refinement for ego as well. So what happens? Divine dialogue, we've got from the finest level of creation folding up to the densest level, and from the densest level folding back to the finest level. And there's this loop. And every stroke of the loop results in refinement. At wherever we are in that loop, in that cycle, refinement is happening there, and now there, and now there, and now there, and now there. So the evolution for the mind occurred, and then as the fold goes into the finer levels, evolution of ego. And what emerges from that is a clear, concise, highly nuanced, highly defined appreciation of cosmic ego, integrated. So that's essentially what's owned. Sense of self. Sense of self on yet a more refined and more absolute level. Here we go. Hello, Dorothy. I just heard a 5-year-old died from the virus today. This is heartbreaking. Also read lots of people have no apparent underlying conditions, and so perhaps the virus is changing. As mentioned in a previous post, as mentioned here today, the divine is doing it. Divinity is doing all this. Divinity is doing all this. Yes, it is heartbreaking when children die. Here in America, we've had 2 infants die so far, I think. We don't always know when children are little if there is an underlying condition which is potential, like a potential underlying condition, which maybe doesn't manifest for them until they get older, maybe 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, something like that. We don't know. But the strokes of life and death are in the hands of being. They're in the hands of the divine. So yes, it's heartbreaking. I would say the healing work we need to do is for our own hearts. For the souls that come and go, at this point, there isn't any coming back. So our hearts go out to the families of everyone, of all the people who choose this time in history. They choose, they select, their big eternal soul selects to use this illness as an opportunity to exit this lifetime for whatever reason. I'm sure there are lots of stories. There's stories behind everyone. There's stories behind everything. Thank you for bringing our awareness to the severity of the problem. We can't stop. That's why we have to do the free webinar next weekend, because there's going to be more to do until this is done. Next person. Hopes I got the 2 emails with scientific research connecting, I think he meant to write Wuhan, but he wrote Wuhan, and 5G and the coronavirus. It appears very convincing. Please look at it later. Thank you, I will. What is the difference between Akasha and ether? Good question. I thought they were the same thing, i.e. the most refined of the 5 elements. Yeah, that's a very good question, because I'm calling this the etheric body. Akasha is space. The etheric body, even though, to my dear friend who wrote this, when I started seeing all these layers of creation, we didn't have a kind of nice uniform set lexicon for describing and understanding it. So, I was just using terms. I was using terms that came. So the word etheric was used for this energy body, but I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but if we look at the Vedic koshas, which are the different sheaths of the body, there's something called a pranic body, which I think may be very close to what I call the etheric body, which is more, we could think of it as a body of air. Think of it as a body of air. I feel when I look at the etheric body, I see the elements of air and space haven't changed very much, but the elements of earth, water, and fire have come down. The fire, like earth element, has reduced a lot at the level of the etheric body. Water element has reduced a lot. There's still some flow, but not as much like incessant flow as there is in the physical. And then fire element is there, kind of reduced just somewhat. And then air and space elements are still fairly well established as they are established in the physical body. So this is the beginning of the refinement of the elements at the level of the etheric body. It's also the beginning of the loosening of the timelines in which we are bound. We're bound because of our past actions and our present actions. We're bound to be taking certain steps as we move forward. And this actually ties into that point about the 5G, which is that I feel that part of what we're looking at here are multiple timelines that are still, to a certain degree, they're still virtual, and that the power in the present comes from accessing the flexibility of the etheric body to move in and out of virtual options, past and future virtual options, which gives us a chance to kind of like slightly experiment with like, well, what if I move a little bit in this direction? Then what kind of an experience do I have? And then, okay, well, what if I tweak it and I move in it this way? Then how does the experience come back to me? Or if I tweak it again, I move in it this way, how does the experience come back to me? So the etheric body, it's physical, it's like formed enough, it's got enough form in it that we can actually bounce our experiences off of the environment, the etheric environment, and get a sense of how the experience is going to impact physically, or impact, because this is the thing, I mean, we're humans, we're in our physical bodies, so we're always looking to how do we get the divine level of nature's intelligence working its way up to this material level better. Feels like we need a stabilized infusion of pure potential in the etheric body. I'm asking being, and I'm looking at everyone's etheric bodies. Pure potential, as I pointed out earlier, it's a lot like the side of my picture. It's just that radiant, beaming, eternal perfection of source. The pure potential it's very interesting what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it sitting best in the skin, in our skin, and in our outer layers, the outer layers of our body, cellular, sitting at a cellular level of the body, more at the outer layers of our body. Oh, yes, immune system. So, of course, skin is like one of the main, it's like got more immunomodulators in it than any other organ of the body. And so the pure potential is sitting at our outer coating, our outer shell there. And the pure potential is sitting there with a lot of bliss. It's activating its own nature. It's like there's a internal fold, there's a dynamic internal dynamism going on there with the pure potential coming to the skin that's creating not just, it looks like the skin, it's not just the maintainer of immunomodulators, but there's a lot of hormones and other types of neurochemicals that are produced by the skin. That's so interesting. I'm not a doctor, so I don't always know So there's like part of it's a surprise for me, right? But I guess that our skin can also produce lots of good, interesting neurochemicals of various types. Pheromones probably are produced somewhere in there, in these layers, these epidermal layers, right? But bliss, I'm seeing bliss in the outer layer, bliss in the outer layer. And that bliss in the outer layer, just like if we think of the outer layer like all these little leaves or whatever, little tiny branches in the surface, they're fed, that outer layer is fed by the circulatory system. Circulatory system is picking up the bliss, and it's bringing the bliss back into the deep portions of the physiology. At an etheric level, the etheric body and the physical body both are affected by this level of healing. I remember reading just ages and ages ago, and of course nobody knows for sure because it was long enough ago, but that when the bubonic plague was ripping through Europe, that there was one town that seemed to not get it as much. I think there may have even been two towns that didn't get it as much. And they claimed that the reason they didn't get the infection was because they focused their attention on their bliss, basically. Right? That was from that book. Was that Tom? We wrote that book, The World Lit Only by Fire. It was written by a journalist who'd done a really, really deep, extensive research into all the writings and all the information at that time. And so we don't know, because obviously that wasn't confirmed by hard scientific proof or anything like that. But I definitely feel that the bliss, there's some aspect of body experiencing bliss, which is part of our ability to have a stronger immune system. Also, it ties into the question about self-sacrifice, because I definitely feel, if we look right now at how different countries, different states in America, like all the state governments are, America has certain advantages, which I think are quite wonderful, but then, there are times when the advantages become disadvantages. Here in Iowa, there is no stay-at-home order, things like that. The point here is that she said a floodgate of insights opened up for her around the topic of self-sacrifice. And if I could address that today, it would be great. She says here, this also kind of refers back to the 5G thing, that a lot of conspiracy theories that assume conscious intention behind harmful events or effects has probably a root in the mind, and sees sacrifice as a gateway either to heaven or to hell. So can we grow out of Aztec mentality? Well put. So, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, for some people, the opportunity, the presence of the virus becomes an opportunity for heaven, basically. Individuals that are stuck in physiologies where they see no opportunity for evolution, then this is a step out. But also, I appreciate that the lady who asked this question is pointing out that there's also a hellish element in this too, and that's the part that we want to avoid. We want to get into the evolutionary transformation, the heavenly aspects, and not the other. The bliss is a direct communication of our pure potential, which itself is an antidote for self-sacrifice. The awareness and the stability of your pure potential, every particle of the self, is probably the best antidote to self-sacrifice that there is, because self-sacrifice is literally the opposite of that. So good that it's stabilizing the skin, good that it's now going through the circulatory system and getting into kind of deeply, and I'm looking back out into everybody's physiologies, and I'm seeing that bliss is working its way all the way into the bone marrow, all the way into the deepest structures of the physiology, down into the center, every etheric body, every organ of the etheric body has a clearly defined Brahmastan. It has a silent center. It has, your liver has a little central point. Your heart has a central point. Your nose has a central point. Your eyes have their central point. All the organs have their tongue has a central point. They have this point in them that's like the geographic center of the organ. And with the etheric body, these centers are capable of holding or being an anchor to the silence of being. Just like our whole body has the cord of light that anchors us to the side. Sorry, every time I put my hands up, I turn blue. But anyway, the anchor is in the center. And in the center of each organ, pure potential stabilizing, pure potential integrating. In fact, I'm seeing that each person is able to create, because now we're looking at our pure potential from the perspective of the liver versus from the perspective of the small intestine versus from the perspective of the ear versus from all the perspectives of the different organs. It creates a matrix. There's a matrix. It's like a pure potential matrix. Oh, that's so cool. I have to write that down. Pure potential matrix. Awesome. So a matrix throughout the whole physiology, and as we know, matrices have a fractal structure, kind of like the trees, that each small portion looks like the big portion, looks like the whole big portion. So it goes down. So the matrices are sitting in the Brahmastans. For those of you not familiar with Vedic terminology, that means the silent center of the organs of the body. The pure potential matrix, sitting anchored. It's anchoring in the anchor. The Brahmastan is the anchor to being, and this is an anchor in the anchor. And this is what it does, is it anchors the capacity or potential of that organ or that every part of the body where it sits to stabilize that pure potential, to own it. Oh, so there we refer back to that eternal value of ownership. That's why we had to do that healing earlier. Now it makes sense. That the thing that was holding back the potential of the physiology was the quality of ownership, which is a kind of essential. It's like an essential byproduct, or it is a result of the turn of divine being into its own nature. That has been an obstruction or blockage. It's an obstruction or blockage. And certainly in the case of self-sacrifice, it manifests yoked to fear and illusion and tells you everything that's ever gone wrong in the history of the universe is your fault, right? That's like the ultimate wrong form of ownership, right? Is like all that is not good in the creation comes home to roost. The thing is that when we look at if we look at the value of ownership in its eternal form, it's like it's like a law of nature. It's just an essential construct. It's an essential byproduct of the movement of divinity, or the nature of the divine to manifest the whole creation. So this is being purified. Ownership is being purified, and all the egoic forms are being cleared from that value. What does success, here's a question. What does successfully look like? That looks like a half a question. What does successfully, oh, I understand. What does successfully, like how we navigate successfully through the crisis that we're in, what does that look like? Okay, that question, because we're running out of time, I feel that I answered that question very thoroughly yesterday. So be sure to check yesterday's session. But essentially, we're looking at an evolution that affects our whole world. It affects the human physiology. We could be looking at an actual restructuring of human physiology on the overall for our whole for the race of what we call human beings, but also a restructuring all the way down to a microbial level of our world, and certainly an opening and a much deeper, more complete and profound flow of open, clear, lucid communication between ourselves as humans and the microbial and mineralogical worlds. This is essential because it is that relationship that makes or breaks our survival. So this relationship really, and if anybody saw the video that I uploaded on December 29th or 31st, 2019, I uploaded, I think it was the 31st, the day before the new year. In that video, I predicted that 2020 would be the year of a huge transformation in our relationship with the microbial level of our world. Oh, look, 4 people saw that video and you remember. Yeah, when that came out of that, I go into a lot of these videos and I don't know what the heck is it was a healing video. It's like, whatever happens, happens. Anyway, but that did come out. So yeah, that's what, in my opinion, this is where successful is heading. At least that's kind of an overarching vision of it. And I would say in our webinars, as we're going forward, we're going to go into a kind of nuanced detail of that process as the year unfolds. And certainly next weekend, God bless you all. May we meet together as a very, very large group where the power of our healing collective expands exponentially as each person joins, new person is joined in. We do have the new Zoom account, which is able to accommodate 500 people. So, and we're accommodating about 100 computer hookups today. So thank you all for being with me. All right. Thank you from one of our wordsmiths. Thank you. Special blessings and healings for the children today, please. Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel for the children who are passing away with the virus. There are a few, but even more so for the ones who are little and who are losing their mommies and daddies. That's just so hard. So we're just going to take a moment of silence here. And our big, beautiful, powerful healing collective, just sending out a wave of compassion and love and a vision of hope for all the children of the world, all the children of all ages, all the children whose parents are still in the body, that they deserve the presence and guidance of their parents. They deserve the physical presence of their parents to support their growth and to guide them as they move through the next phases of the human experience, where we will be called on greatly, our strengths will be called on greatly. I mean, once we get through this virus, then we got to look at some other serious issues. So. Just feeling that wave. The wave of compassion rises up, flows out to the collective consciousness. The wave of wisdom comes back. That was beautiful. I like that. This is a little bit of an experiment in today's healing session to use our collective silence a little more, to leverage our collective silence a little more, hopefully powerfully, as we're going along. And I'm doing this, you guys, I'm experimenting on you because next weekend, if we have 500 people or more, I kind of want to like make sure I know how those things flow. So, but I do feel that in those moments when I close my eyes and we all go into silence together, very, very powerful. A lot of energy is moving, and I'm trying not to speak it. I'm in the habit of speaking it, but just give us that time, honor that silence, so that the silence, we can all appreciate it with more detail. Missed yesterday's session. Did you talk about the astrological portal that is opening this evening? Right, I understand Jupiter, I didn't. Jupiter and Pluto conjunct which means Pluto is power and Jupiter is expansion. I think if that's what you're referring to. And being not a Jyotishi myself, I'm not the most qualified person to talk about that. And of course, with Jyotish, I don't know how much taking into consideration anyway, Pluto, the outer planets. But nonetheless, this is happening, and this is, in my opinion, the movement of the planets is the environmental reflection of what's going on the level of consciousness. And what's going on the level of consciousness is being created by us continuously, moment by moment, as our dialogue between our divine source of us and the relative material level of us. And I think this is a point that maybe I should have defined for everyone a little more clearly earlier with regards to the etheric body, and how it's the power or the potential of our etheric physiology is our ability to work with timelines and to literally create future scenarios for ourselves. This is what we can do with our etheric body better than what we do in our physical body. We're bound into the present moment and space-time, but our etheric body isn't. And so this is one of the functions of the etheric body. Again, the group, you guys are just pulling me in. We're just pulling in and putting that pure potential right on that spot, right on that, you could say that portal or that aspect of the etheric body that has the ability to manipulate the timelines to a certain degree. And there, the pure potential sitting. So here it's an establishment, again, of a matrix. And it looks to me as if it's going into the cord of light. And the cord of light is an organ shared by all the layers of the physiology, by the physical, etheric, mental, emotional, all the way out to the causal, and even to source. It even connects to source, so that pure potential is going in there. Good job. I still feel like I lost a thread in there, but forgive me, maybe I'll bring it back. This is an idea from her intuition that the frequency of healing is ongoing with or without the webinar. Yes, that is absolutely true and correct. Oh, that we're creating, oh yes, that we're creating from this present moment, and that the future has not been established. The future is a manifestation of our dynamic interaction, the dynamic self-referral interaction of divine being, all the way out to its physical material manifestation and back again. So we are key players in how this scenario plays out. And it's all based on what we do right now. Thank you for reminding me. Need to get this frequency ongoing so that every evolutionary positive thought has a powerful effect as a collective. If this is possible, thanks. If this is interesting, yes, it's so absolutely interesting. Would be using consciousness all the time for good. Yes, and here's where we come down to a healing for the respiratory system, which I did upload, I think Sunday before last, or maybe it was just last Sunday. We uploaded healing for the respiratory system. You can check on free on YouTube. And in there, the principle is that the transformations taking place to upgrade our respiratory system supports every breath being a gift to the universe. Every breath is a gift. Every breath is a gift. And of course, this is leveraging kind of like opposite. It's leveraging opposite, that the thing about the virus is that every breath is a struggle and is dragging me down one step closer to my death. And so now the transformation is every breath is a blessing. And even if a person is sick, it's still a blessing. Anonymous. I'm wondering though, maybe it's not necessary to even be exposed to the virus, each individual. No, I agree. I think that as we're through today's energy healing session webinar, as we're activating the pure potential of the evolutionary transformation, which comes from the virus, then what we get is kind of like a hundredth monkey effect, right? We start to, because our collective is powerful, we're able to anchor and integrate and stabilize that evolutionary transformation quality. And we've described it now from several different angles in today's session and experiencing it directly through the various healings that we've done. So yes, as that stabilizes, what happens is it starts getting picked up by others. Just the way a virus spreads, the antidote also spreads. The antibodies also spread. So we live it. We breathe it in and out with every breath. And as a result, this starts to perpetuate through, it starts to propagate through the field of consciousness at that level, particularly because this is where our focus is, emotional, mental, etheric, and physical levels, which are the areas that have been maximally obstructed. That's the area that's up for main evolution during the time of this virus. My teen daughter is depressed. How can I help her through this? Help her digestion. Most of the neurochemicals associated with digestion and also associated with bliss are produced in the digestive system. She needs digestive support. I have free healings on my website. We need to work with her digestion. We need to work with her digestion. That's easy, right? When we're thinking, oh, well, how do I change her emotional structure? Well, that's like a little bit abstract, but we start with the digestion. Liquid light is coming in. Is this through the etheric body then that we can anchor in a higher timeline? Yes, yes. And I would like to say to this lady, I absolutely adore your comments as they come in. I feel as if they're always very validating and absolutely, it's always exciting to see you just flowing. You flow so beautifully. Yes. So the healing for the etheric body, and what we're doing is we're just putting our attention on the etheric body and we're waking it up. And this, I'm over time and there's still more questions. And I didn't even get to the dream time question, which I really wanted. This brilliant, beautiful man from California asked in last night, you know, what's the relationship between the etheric body and the etheric realm and dream time? Because boy, that's, now, of course, I kind of have answered that question, although not specifically using the word dream time in today's session. But I feel that's also like a really potent question that maybe we can come back and even explore it in a more nuanced way in our webinar, a free webinar next week. So pure potential is now rooted in being, yes, I'm going through these quickly, guys, because there's just 3 left. Thank you, Dorothy, communion into silence and anchoring of the healing. And there's a global meditation occurring tonight at 10:45. Thank you for that. There are also, through the TM movement, there are daily global meditations going on. We will post those for everybody if anybody is interested. And those are going, basically, it's kind of like a wave of silence going around the earth. Those times are set in optimal times for each time zone. So one time zone goes through its silence and then it transfers to the next time zone, to the next, like that, like a wave rolling around the earth. Thank you for bringing that up. Is it possible to have the mantra? Oh, yes, absolutely. I will include a link to that mantra in the recordings, which will come out this evening, our time this evening. As soon as we get the videos rendered, we will send it. And then when, dear Dorothy, when we sleep, do we heal ourselves in the world? What a sweet, loving mother question to end our webinar on. The answer is absolutely, that sleep time is our best purification and healing time. But also because when we're in sleep, when we're in dream mode, we are literally in the etheric field. Our dreams occur in the etheric realm. So when we're experiencing dream time, we're experiencing that aspect of ourself. That's why it's so lovely as consciousness expands and awakens, that we start to have lucid dreaming and we start to become more familiar and more clued in to the changes and transformations that take place in the etheric realm. There were cool, funny, hilarious questions. that came in yesterday to, lady had an intense dream about me. And I was a small, scraggly animal crawling out of a cave to confront a big, scary being. And the small, scraggly animal called out powerfully, "I'm Dorothy Rowe, and I have the power of God on my side." All the forms that we see in our dream time are actually expressions of ourself. So it's like I become, what you know Dorothy Rowe to be becomes a kind of allegory for self, essentially. And the other question that was just too beautiful for words, and I feel that I danced around the answer to this question today, was, can we connect the etheric body with the Australian Aboriginal dream time? So that question is, like I said, so potent that I am looking forward to going back and taking it in a more nuanced way and more complete way as we move forward. I hate to leave your presence because you are all so beautiful. I bow down to each person in this healing webinar. So much reverence and gratitude for each one of you. Absolute adoration. And I thank you for the time together. I thank being for the fact that such a thing even exists. Such a thing as our healing webinars even exist. Thank you all so much for this time. And do join me next weekend. As I said, it's going to be free. We would like to get as many people as possible to join in. And we will do the healings again, this time for the coronavirus directly, the COVID-19, and in a big, big way, in a big way. So I look forward to seeing everyone again soon. And then for our webinar, the one after that, which is on immortality. So hopefully at that point, we will have been through the peak of the COVID-19 and we can start really looking into, oh, tears are flowing. Yeah, me too. Inside right here, I just love you all so much. Yeah, so that's hopefully where we'll be in 3 weeks. Fingers crossed, you guys. Okay, see you all soon. Everybody stay in, stay safe, take care, don't get sick. We love you. Bye.